Hey everybody, I'm Ricky Heller from rickyheller.com. Happy 2016. This is my first video of the new year. I got all gussied up just for you guys with the red lipstick and the earrings to match. Woohoo! So we're ready to roll into 2016, and I wanted to start with a question that I've gotten a few times from readers, which is, what's the difference between eating a whole grain and eating a whole grain flour? And is one better than the other? And if so, which one should I use? So yes, the short answer is yes, there's a difference. And the reason is to do with how a grain is actually formed. So I wanted to start by talking about what are the different parts of an actual whole grain. And what I'm going to do is see if I can get my cool little image to share with you. Let's see if this will work. You should be seeing a picture now of a whole grain. So this is my handy dandy hand-drawn image for you guys. So as you can see, the outside of a whole grain is called the bran. And the bran is a sort of tough outer skin of the actual kernel. And it's where the fiber is. There's lots of fiber there, but it's also where vitamins and some minerals are going to be housed. If the grain has minerals, that's where they're going to be. In the middle, you can see what's called the endosperm. And that part of the grain is really mostly carbohydrate and a little bit of protein. And actually, you can get protein from whole grains. You might know that. Some people don't think of them as a good source of protein. They're an incomplete source of protein. So if you're looking for all 9 essential amino acids, you would need to combine that grain with something else. But you do get some protein there. And then in the middle, that little kernel in the very middle, the germ, is the part that has the essential oils, some B vitamins, and all the antioxidants, and some vitamin E as well. So in a case like that, I'm going to now go back to me. So what is the problem if you make that into a flour? So normally, if you think about that whole grain, the problem is that one of the best parts, which is the germ in the middle where all those oils reside, the problem is those oils are very volatile and they're very delicate. So you have your essential fatty acids that can be degraded really, really quickly if they're exposed to light, to air, or to heat. Now, if you think about how flour is made, of course, it's going to expose that grain when you crunch it up to light, air, and heat. So in their wisdom, and during the Industrial Revolution, when we started making flour in large quantities industrially, what they decided to do was remove the bran and remove the germ. So they took away the part that gave it that fibrous and the color, most of the color. The bran is usually brown or beige or something like that. And the germ where the oils are, because those oils degrade so quickly. So if you take them out, then your flour is much more shelf stable. And in Canada and the US, what they also started to do is, we want flour that's going to create these beautiful white cakes and cookies, and angel food cake is really white, white, white if you think about it. So they actually began to bleach the flour after it was produced and milled. And they also added preservatives, all kinds of chemicals to keep that flour shelf stable. So that's what's called refined flour. It has no more bran and no more germ. It's mostly just the endosperm, which is the carbohydrate section, which of course is the best part for baking. But the problem there is, of course, if you're like me and you're on an anti-candida diet, or maybe you just want to go gluten-free, you want to eat a bit more healthfully, when you're eating those refined flours, you're not getting any bran, so you're not getting all that wonderful fiber. And as you know, the fiber is the part that slows the digestion. It slows the conversion of those carbohydrates into glucose, so that the bran is what prevents those spikes in your blood sugar. And also the bran has, it keeps you regular, and it's really good for cardiovascular health. So we're losing that. We're losing the essential fatty acids as well, which are food for every cell in your body and have myriad health benefits. And you're losing your vitamin E, and you're losing your antioxidant power. So, of course, you want to go whole grain if you can. So the question then becomes, all right, so what about whole grain flour? If you have stone ground flour, isn't that equally good? Unfortunately, the answer is no. I hate to tell you. Partly because as soon as you turn a whole grain into a flour, you are processing it. So it is no longer in its original form. And what you're actually doing is to some extent refining that as well, because you're breaking down that grain. When you eat a whole grain, your body has to chew it in order to grind up the bran and release the endosperm, and it works together to keep it lower glycemic. When you're eating a flour, it's already partially refined, which means it is going to raise blood sugar levels a little bit faster. But the other problem is that even when you're making a stone ground flour, you are still exposing that grain to light, air, and heat. So if you think about it, the stone ground flour is great. It has all three components of that grain in there, but that means it contains those essential fatty acids, which are so delicate. And that's why if you're going to use whole grain flours, what I would suggest is storing them in the freezer, ideally. You can keep them in the freezer up to 3 months, and that's going to protect them from the heat, the light, and the air to some extent. And you can keep them in the fridge for up to 6 weeks. But if you've just gone to a gluten-free diet and you went up and what happens to a lot of people is they go out and they buy different flour products so that they can bake all these wonderful recipes that they see in the gluten-free cookbooks. And then you might buy teff flour for a particular recipe, and you have to buy a whole bag, which is like half a pound per pound, or 500 grams if you're in Canada, and you end up using it once for like a quarter of a cup or 60 milliliters, and then you're done with it. And so you can put it in the freezer and hope that you're going to use it again within 3 months, but for a lot of people, it goes bad. So what I do is I have a little bit of a trick that I use, especially I used this a lot when I was in the early stages of the anti-candida diet, where you're not allowed flour products at all. I take the whole grain and I sort of turn it into a flour-like product at home by myself. So, and it's much quicker, and you're not allowing it to be exposed to the air and the light and the heat for the same amount of time if you're going to use it right away. So here's, for instance, what you might start with is just a jar of millet. And the beauty of using whole grains like that, as you can see, you could just store it in a jar, and they are good almost indefinitely. And the reason for that is that bran, the outside coating, you can think of it as like a tougher shell, the way, whole nuts are in their shell. And what that does is that's a form of protection. So if you buy the whole grain and store it in your pantry, you can really keep that for months and months and months. And those volatile oils in the middle are being protected from all the elements out there. And then you take those whole grains, and what you do is you put them in a coffee grinder. You grind them up. Now, I don't have a plug in me, so I actually did this before. And what you end up with is a flour-like mixture. It's powdered. And so, for instance, if you want to have pancakes or if you want to make cookies, you can grind up just as much as you need at that moment. So you're only breaking apart those grains right then and there and using them immediately thereafter. Is that perfect? No. I mean, for those of you who are really keen on the health benefits of your grains, even gluten-free grains, you might know that they contain compounds that are called anti-nutrients. So things like phytates, oxalates, lectin. These are compounds that naturally exist in the grains, and they also exist in legumes and nuts and seeds and other plants too. But they exist in the grains to actually prevent predators from eating those grains, so the grain can stay intact so that it can still grow another plant. So in order to really alleviate the effects of those anti-nutrients, the best thing to do is to soak your grains in room temperature water for 12 to 24 hours, or even better, soak them until they sprout. And then, if you were going to do my little trick, you would have to dehydrate them in a dehydrator until they're dry and crisp again, and then grind them in the coffee grinder to make your flour. And that way you know that your grains are going to be as digestible as they could possibly be, with any of those negative anti-nutrients to some extent mitigated, so that you can digest your grains more easily. And then you won't have the risk of causing digestive upset as much, or ultimately leaky gut, or any of those negative effects. So, of course, I mean, I do that every time I use grains. No, no, I don't. Nobody's perfect, and we are all really busy. So for me, this is a really good compromise. Rather than use a flour product, which I know can trigger some candida symptoms for me because of that, the fact that it is processed and refined, and you may have a little bit of rancid oils in there. If those prepared flours have been sitting for any length of time, you're not getting the full nutritional value from those grains, even if they're whole grain flours. So what I do, as I said, is I buy the whole grains, I grind them into flour, and for me that works. I probably don't use flour products very often anymore, so for the few times that I do, I'm happy with this as a compromise. And if you're on an anti-candida diet, or if you're just thinking about changing your diet, this is the kind of little tip and trick that I am going to be sharing in my new program, Food Freedom. So this program's for anybody who wants to go gluten-free or egg-free or dairy-free or sugar-free or all of the above. And obviously, if you're on an anti-candida diet, that includes all of those, and that's the kind of diet that I follow. And we're going to be talking all about how to bring this kind of diet into your life in a way that's easy, convenient, and delicious so that you can actually live well without gluten, eggs, dairy, or refined sugar. So if you're interested in finding out more about that program, I'm going to put a link up right here. Take a look, and I hope you'll join us there. But if you're just moving to gluten-free grains and you're wondering about how you can use flour products in a way that's more healthful, that isn't going to degrade the oils to the same extent that a refined flour would, then this is possibly a trick that you can use that will help you. I hope that was useful. If you like this video, please, I hope you subscribe to my channel or give it a thumbs up down there. And I will see you next time on the next video. Take care.